This is Peter Lisoskie. I guess the best way to describe me, Eric, is I'm a part futurist, part capitalist, part mad scientist. And I just like looking at mega trends and mega shifts and finding opportunities and pockets that I can serve to do two things: create an impact and hopefully have a chance of starting a movement. So that's a little bit about me.
I love it. And where does this story start that you're going to tell us?
So the story, Eric, is really interesting. This started about 20 years ago. My brother-in-law is Doug Crichton, who's the brother of Michael Crichton, who you could know that from Jurassic Park. Those guys, Doug actually worked with Michael behind the scenes. Michael was kind of the front man for all the movies and the books and all that kind of stuff. But I was sitting out in Hawaii. Michael used to have a big compound in Honolulu Bay in Kauai, and it was my older sister's birthday, and so we all came out there to celebrate her birthday. And we were sitting outside on picnic tables there, right on the ocean. Thing to know about Doug is he's passed away now. Doug he was the longest survivor of bone marrow cancer in history. And so they actually did a medical study. But what was interesting, Eric, about this in this story, in my journey with this, is I knew Doug, but I didn't. He lived in Connecticut, I lived in California, so we didn't get together quite a bit. So we were sitting there, and everybody went to bed, and we were kind of sitting there by ourselves in the middle of the night under the stars at about 2 a.m. And me being a curious person, Eric, I just asked him. I said, "Hey, Doug, what's it like to have cancer?" Because I've known people with cancer, but I never was able to ask that question. And I am not kidding. He looked me right in the eye. He said, "I gave it to myself." I said, "What? Why would you give yourself cancer?" So he told me the story about all the stuff that happened in his childhood and the rage, and that he couldn't let it go. And I mean, he worked with, Yogananda. He worked with vibrational healers, and he was talking about, the black stuff coming out of the top of his head and all of this, negative energy. And what was interesting about that story is, at that time in my life, I knew something was going on that was different, but I couldn't really, because I was trained as an engineer. You're supposed to be logical. You're supposed to do all this stuff. And all this other stuff started hitting me, which kind of almost knocked me out of balance so far that I felt like I was having a continual out-of-body experience. And so we were talking and things like that. And, the funny thing is, he looked at me and he said, I sense you're kind of having some trouble in your life. I go, yeah. And, at that time, my marriage was starting to fail and things like that. And I was just going, man, what is going on here? And he said, well, you know what? There's 7 key questions. And he said, I'll share a first couple with you. He said, this first one, he said, this is going to really impact you. And it's helped me in my journey. And that first question that he said is, ask yourself this almost every day. What if everything you thought to be true were not? Now, what would you do? And that I almost fell off the chair, because that challenges all your belief systems, everything that the frameworks, because Eric, you know this, right? A lot of your listeners do. Everything we do follows in some kind of a framework, right? So me being somebody, if you look at I think you probably looked at my LinkedIn profile, or for the listeners, the last line of my header is, I live in Contrarianville. You want to visit? Because I always, if the status quo is going this way, I go that way. Because I just have always felt that it's better to create frameworks than to follow frameworks as best you can. There are times when it's safe that you should follow a framework. But that was that first question. And then he followed it up with the second question, which was kind of a statement, is how would you let go? Because the funny thing about it is all this stuff was going on in my life and all this turmoil. And I just felt like I was getting this mountain of stuff was dumping on me. So, we went through, he gave me some of the other 7 keys, but at that time I wasn't ready for them. And so I went home. I used to live up in a place called Lake Stevens, Washington, in Washington State. And as I was, going through my normal daily life, it's kind of like, I always talk about Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey and, the reluctant hero. And I'm sitting there like Luke Skywalker doing my thing. And I keep getting this stuff keeps hitting me, this energy. And I keep going, pushing it back. No. And it got so bad that this one, I'll never forget, Eric. I was out doing, lawn work. And I mean, it physically was hitting me, and to the point where I got on the phone and I dialed up Doug. I go, Doug, what the hell's going on here? Because this is like, I've never experienced like this. And he laughed. He goes, I was just waiting for you to call me. And so he gave me he said, one of the things we talked about meditation, we talked about breath work, we talked about, he gave me the book by the Yogananda to read, some different tools that I could use to kind of understand what was happening in my life. And so that was the beginning of my journey 20 years ago on a combination of, non-logical, more spiritual. And, ever since then, I have expanded into, I've, looked at things like Joseph Campbell's work. I've looked at the story, the hero's journey. I have another story about 20 years ago. I met a couple neuroscientists, which fascinated me on, how do you deal with, the brain chemistry and how do people actually make decisions and things like that. And these are fMRI and EEG studies. So it's not, I'm not knocking NLP. NLP is great, but this was actually working with these guys and seeing what's going on in the brain and certain stimulus response and things like that. So, it's just, I guess the reason why I'm bringing all this stuff, the commonality is, for me, and I hope for a lot of people listening to your show, no matter what you're doing, be curious, right? Always be searching, because it really does open up a lot of doors. Now, I know this sounds really kind of funny and funky, but, I'm able to go up into the energy field and manipulate energy. It's taken me a lot of years and a lot of practice to do all this kind of stuff. And people, as an engineer, they look at me like, are you off your rocker? But it's like, there's stuff that exists out there. I guess what opened my mind too, Eric, was I've traveled. Somebody asked me in some show, they said, like, where have you been in the world? I said, well, the only two continents I haven't been is Africa and Antarctica. I have been just about everywhere in the world. And I, related to the story, about 6 years before we was talking to Doug, I was up in Taiwan, and I went way outside. There was this old ruins, and because somebody told me about it, that I was, because I ran a division for Verifone. We had a design center in Taipei. So I said, well, it was a weekend. I was going to go take a drive and go out there. So it was like, where the hell out there? Something down some dirt road, and you go down this road, and all of a sudden there's like this jungle area, and you go into this, and here's this big temple. It's a Buddhist temple, right? And I walk in there, and I'm the only, not only the only American, but the only, Caucasian American in there. And everybody's like looking around, and I'm trying to be, reverent and things. So I'm just standing there kind of taking the environment in. And the thing that's funny, Eric, is I get this tap on my shoulder, and I look over, and it's this lady in this black cloak, like the witch in Snow White. She looked just like that. She had this big long nose, bony nose, and she had bony fingers. And she started talking to me in Taiwanese. And fortunately, there was this kid. He probably was maybe 13 or 14. He comes running over, and he starts talking to me in English. And he said, hey, I'll interpret for you because I want to practice my English. I said, yeah, that sounds good, dude. Go ahead. So he explained to me that this lady wants to read my bones. She wants to share, she was kind of an oracle. So I said, sure, I'm open-minded. Why not? So she pulls out these bones. She has them in their bony hand, and we go up towards the temple where Buddha is, and there's incense and stuff going on, and she throws them against the rock wall. And I'll never forget this, because it was kind of like in slow motion. They hit the wall, you could hear them clanking, and they hit. She kneels down, you can hear her bones creak as she kneeled down, and she started talking, and the kid was translating, and he was talking about all the things that she was telling my future, like, you're going to get a divorce, you're going to leave your wife, you're going to, go into business for yourself. You won't be working a job in the corporate world. In her way, but damned if not every one of those things came true in my life. It was the craziest thing ever, and I'll never forget that, because it was such a totally different experience that you'd have in the Western world in America.
God, I love all of that.
I had a crazy journey. It's been a lot of things like that have happened.
You mentioned manipulating energy in the field.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what you mean.
So what's interesting is, and this was from some of my studies. I don't know. Have you ever read the book? It's Michael Newton, Journey of Souls.
No.
Okay. So this book was recommended to me by my sister and also Doug. Journey of Souls, that was another big enlightenment for me because it talked about, and again, people listening to the show, you can believe this, not believe it. Everybody has their own belief systems. But, I'm going from question one, like I told you. So I'm being open-minded to different things. And this is about reincarnation in multiple lives. Michael Newton was a psychologist, but he did studies where he put people through hypnosis and went into their past lives. And he had all these stories. I mean, a lot of people hear in mainstream about near-death experiences and all this kind of stuff. That wasn't that. It was more going into your past lives. And the book talks about, how do you get prepared to come to this particular school called Earth, which is very dense. It's very hard to deal with. There's a lot of pain and agony. But, the way he described it is, you choose to come here as a soul because you are wanting to elevate and accelerate your vibrational, raising your vibration. And the whole point of the thing is, right, we are a collective. All of us are connected together as one vibration. So basically, you raise vibration, Eric, you're raising it for everybody. Same with me, right? So I was reading that really opened my mind, and it got me. He also talked about the veil, and he talked about the difference between our world, which is 3D, and across the veil, which is 5D. Okay. This book is kind of fascinating. If you're open-minded, you want to read some of this. I started reading the dang thing, and I think I read it in like 2 days. I couldn't put the thing down because it was really interesting. But anyway, there's been, and then I did a lot of research, but there's some common sense practical knowledge to this too, which is we go to sleep every night to recharge our physical body, but we also go to sleep at night to connect back across the veil in the 5D. That's where the energy field is. This is why if people have bad insomnia and don't go to sleep for long periods of time, they go insane because they cannot connect in the spiritual realm because they're not able to go to sleep. So the 5D is really this energy field where you can go and enter it. And it's interesting because it's a collection. It's hard to describe. At least my experience of it is you are up in the energy field and you see not like a medium type thing where you see people, because I've never seen people, but it feel energy of souls in there. And you can actually project energy and move energy around in there. There was a movie that I'm trying to remember the name of it that kind of depicted it that way. But it's a way to communicate with other forms of energy, because at the end of the day, that's really what we are. I mean, souls are energy, everything's energy, right? So just, over time, the funny thing is just through discovery, Eric, I kind of stumbled into it. It wasn't like, oh, I have this intention to go into the energy field and become a master. I was kind of bubbling around. Doug was helping me while he was alive because he had done a lot of vibrational work and energy field work. And so I talked to him about, different things. He was kind of almost like my, if you remember the movie Star Wars, right? You have Luke Skywalker and then you have Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Obi-Wan Kenobi's kind of the herald, right? Well, Doug for me was kind of like not just Obi-Wan Kenobi that got me to cross the threshold in the hero's journey, but he kind of was my Yoda. I mean, because he would tell me things and he'd go, it was always like, hey, do with it whatever you want. He never, opposed the belief system on me or go, this is the right path, because there's no right path. Everybody has their own path, and whatever that path is a good path, right? And as humans, we make a lot of stupid, dumb mistakes along the way, and we veer off the path, and we get so far off the path, we go, oh, man, this is bad. I either got a health problem or I feel like I'm having an out-of-body experience, and then that's your signal to come back to balance, right? And we do this, right? we're always going, this is our true path, and we're doing this as humans. We're all over the place. Because, the little joke on us was, Michael Newton, you can pick your own. The way he describes it in the book is you go to this area where there's a group of angels, and there's it's almost like the way he describes it, like TV screens. And it shows your past lives, and then it shows your future life, and you can choose experiences that you want to have. But here's the trick, right? When you get born, you're ahead, so you got to figure it out, right? Joke on you. So this is the whole thing with, this school called Earth. He talks in there too about your soul. I mean, they have different things, but your soul can split into thousands. You can go to different schools. You can be on different schools all over, wherever the terrestrial universe is, all at the same time. Or you can choose just to, have your soul come down here to this school. But that's kind of all his belief system and things. And it's fascinating, the way he describes it, and how that works. So
Yogananda that you're talking about Paramahansa Yogananda, the Diary of a Yogi.
Yes.
So I had forgotten that you were the one that recommended that. And I was trying to remember who told me about it. And so I am just swimming in the philosophy of him right now. In fact, there's a self-realization school here in San Antonio that they have a 10 a.m. service that I'm going to hit up on Sunday because it is so incredible. He talks about the law of miracles, right? How there is this quantum physics and this unified theory is starting to catch up with this 6,500, Reishi Vedic scripture insight that we have about matter and, mind, right? How the material universe is essentially just this stuff of consciousness, right? That we can manipulate it. And it's been a fascinating journey for me to come at this from the perspective of somebody who was born and raised Mormon, who then did ayahuasca, had a chakra opening experience that lasted months and months and months, right? Going all the way to my fire chakra from my root. And to take all these different perspectives and try to align them into one unified belief for myself. I've had to deconstruct my values, and I've had to deconstruct my belief of what the world is and what it means. And so there's a lot of folks who listen who they are struggling with their religious belief. They are struggling with their purpose in life. They are wanting to find, so the question that Doug gave you about what if reality was just totally different than you believe, that happened to me with the Mormon church falling apart underneath me.
Yeah.
So I had to go on.
I was a Catholic, so I could relate to you.
Yeah, I hear you. So the way that I've been able to journey my way out of this is there's these games that you can play, video games. One of them is called Diablo.
Okay.
And Diablo is one of the greatest games ever made. They really messed up Diablo 3 and 4. But in that game, you have this system of talents that these trees. So you get this talent, you get a couple credits in it, you can go to the next one, and you build out your character based off of this tree of talents. And that's how I've been approaching life now. Character died. And I now came back to life at the start point at level 1. And I now I'm on this journey of finding all of these different talents that interest me and are making me into the hero that I am today. So your advice and your questions that Doug gave you, thank you for Doug, may he rest in peace, right, are really timely for me.
Yeah. And
I can appreciate the folks who are out there struggling to find their way. And so I'll ask you, right, selfishly, how do you know the right path for yourself? You keep talking about how we veer. Where does that compass exist in your life and in your mind? And how do you keep yourself oriented in the thing that is going to be best for your experience in this particular TV screen, this particular test, or whatever you want to call it?
Yeah. That's a really good question, Eric. There's a third question I'm going to share here too. And guys, if you're an entrepreneur and you're listening to this, it applies as much to spirituality as it does entrepreneurialism and innovation. And it also, I'll get to this center path. And that third question is, what else is possible? Because I have used that since, I wish that Doug shared that with me. And the reason how I use it is, and what else is possible is, if, we are stuck in this daily life, in this thick 3D, if you look at the framers, I was just thinking about this the other day, Eric, right? We build these things called houses, and we have
it's like toothpaste and like
toothpaste and all this stuff. But it's all good because it's meant for us to be in this thick, dense 3D. I look at it like, if you look at the collective, right? I always talk to people about the analogy of an ocean, right? If you ever dove into the ocean, right? The light's up at the top, you start diving down. And when you get further down, the pressure gets greater and greater, gets denser and denser, and it gets darker and darker. All of our jobs, as part of what we're supposed to be doing here, is not just for our own self-raising of vibration, but it's to pull the people below us up to the next level. Everybody wants to go to the surface. That's in total enlightenment. That's what the Yogananda talks about, right? When you are in total enlightenment, you are closer to whatever that entity is that you call it, which is the collective, the top vibration, right? But we have to, part of our responsibility is to help each other and pull each other up. Whoever's below you, you help them. Whoever's above you, they help you, right? Because everybody, and it's all okay. Everybody's at different levels in the ocean, and that's okay. You are where you are. So I guess answering that question is, here's the thing. What I found for me is the best way to understand what that true center is, you intuitively feel it, but you do that through the practice of meditation. For me, meditation is running. I go out and run, I get into a meditative state. Some people like to cross their legs and levitate and do the Om. That's not me. But everybody has their form. All I'm saying to people listening to the show is, whatever that is, try to find the form that is most comfortable for you, whether it's going for a walk in nature, walking barefoot outside on the ground, running, sitting and meditating. Whatever that form is for you, find it and practice it, because you will find your center in that. And so I try to do that. I don't do it every day, but I try to do it at least, 2 or 3 times a week, so that I can collect back. Because, we could go on and on about this. I've always, the thing I've always been fascinated with is, I know where innovation comes from. Innovation is a collection of our past experiences. But you know how every once in a while, something pops in your head. It has nothing to do with your past life experiences. That's inspiration. Where the hell does that come from? Well, the only thing I can figure out, that's coming from the energy field, the unified field. And that's where you get your inspiration from.
I dig it. Peter, where can everyone find you?
They can find me up on LinkedIn if you're up there. I hang out, just look up my name. And that's where I am. If you want to, message me or DM me, I'm around.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been the Pulse Ox Podcast. Please, if you found this episode valuable, give us a like on Spotify and share it with a friend.